Hi, everyone. Excuse me. This is Gail from Linux Foundation. Just a small request. As you are logging in, can you please update your name and the participants list to include your first and last name and your organization? It just helped me with capturing attendance in the minutes or the notes. You can do that by going to the participants list, clicking on your name, and then clicking on rename.
Hi, hello.
Hi, Johannes. As everyone's dialing in, just a gentle reminder to please add your full name and organization to your name in the participants list. Thank you.
Hello.
Hello. Hello.
Hello.
Let's
Just
just
small.
wait for one more minute for people to join so we can start.
Thanks, John. And just a heads up for everyone. Normally, I manually record these after everyone's here. I did change the settings to automatically record. I missed the last meeting. I was, excuse me, out of the office, and so I realized that was a gap since I wasn't here to manually click record. So now it's just set up to automatically record our sessions.
Great. Thanks.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, so I was going to ask that. So we don't have the recording from the last one, right? On the
No, we
presentation.
don't. Yeah, I wasn't here to click record, so I was like, oh, that was a gap. I should have set this up to automatic. I'm usually at all the meetings, so now that's the only recording we don't have.
Okay, thank you everyone for attending June's UCF TAC meeting. This is Shan, your tech chair. This week we have a very exciting agenda. We have invited, sorry for butcher your name, Avner. Is that correct?
Yes.
Yeah, Avner. He is working with the New York Times R&D team, and he has done some very exciting project using Loader's GL for photogrammetry, a 3D immersive web experience to record the physical world. So without further ado, let's welcome Avner to give a presentation on his work.
Thanks.
And feel free to start sharing your slides. I'm gonna stop my.
Are you able to see the slides?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you for inviting me to speak in here. This is my first time, and it's nice to see everybody here. So yeah, what I want to talk about is the work I've been doing for the New York Times R&D regarding photogrammetry and how I use Loader's GL to produce this story about the Bethel Gospel Choir. So yeah, without further ado. A little bit about me. So I joined the New York Times R&D about 1 year ago as a consultant. They needed somebody to research work for streamlining like big GIS data. And actually it was more about point clouds when I joined. And I do have another role. I'm a doctoral researcher at Aalto University and the Aalto Media Lab in Finland. And I'm working on telerobotics for conflict resolution. I'm based in Finland, originally I'm from Israel. For me, both of my roles kind of fit to the same, in a way, to the same pattern. And I call this kind of a transition from reporting to teleporting. So for the New York Times, you might say I'm teleporting remote places to people or to people's phones and to people's computers. And then in my other role, I'm teleporting the people using robots to remote places, but it's both is about like teleporting in the physical environment. So when I joined the R&D, the photogrammetry and then my work with the point clouds was rather separate. So they already had a working workflow, a proven workflow with photogrammetry that was using the Umbra 3D, also actually a Finnish company, and then running with Three.js. And if maybe some of you know, there were some really, really beautiful works that they did before I joined. This picture is from Diversity Plaza that they did. And there's a link here to the R&D website where you can see more demos. And then I was doing the research how to do point clouds, and I looked at several libraries like Pottery and others, and mainly how to integrate with Three.js, which was really like prevalent at the New York Times R&D. And then ultimately, I ended up suggesting to use Loader's GL with Cesium Ion and Three.js. So using Cesium Ion for tiling the point clouds, and then Loader's GL for loading them all the way to Three.js. So we did some very nice experiments, for example, in this image, like in the wildfires in California, how you could recognize the damage done after wildfire. We did landslides in Puerto Rico. None of this was released as a story as of yet, but this was the research done, and I hope we will continue with this. But then at the same time, something happened with the photogrammetry, which is that company Umbra 3D was basically purchased by Amazon and then abruptly shut down all their services. So New York Times was unable to use them anymore, and they were looking now for a new solution for photogrammetry. And basically that's where I came in, because already doing this work with Lotus GL and with the point clouds, but knowing that actually they can work also for meshes, for GLTFs, and for photogrammetry. So started this endeavor to try to adjust work I did for photogrammetry. So now let's go with the more the technical of how exactly we did this. So as you may know, there is a kind of overlap between Three.js and Lotus GL a bit in this part of loading GLTF. There's a Draco compression, there's the loading GLTF in itself, there's the texture processing, and then I had to do this work kind of figuring out which does what, and which Lotus GL would do and which Three.js would do, and how to synchronize between them. Firstly, then what I did was having Lotus GL process the Draco compression and Three.js process the textures. Now I'm already more towards also doing the Draco in Three.js. But then there was also a lot of adjustment needed just to get started, because the Lotus GL was rather adjusted to the VisGL framework, the DeckGL and others, and I had to kind of make up this context of the frame state, and also do some changes in synchronization about when the tile can be displayed. So I had to do all this synchronizing work, but eventually got something basic working. And then it was more about optimization. So at first, when I tried to show the photogrammetry models, which we first tiled in cesium ion, the performance was not so good. There was a lot of tiles, and there was a lot of like overhead happening, and maybe some memory leaks, maybe some problems with the prioritization. So I did had fixes into Lotus GL for that, mostly about the prioritizing the tiles, that able to load thousands of tiles and then prioritize the network requests based on really which tiles are the most important. And then other things I had to do was to fix some missing stuff in the traversal mechanism. So the Lotus GL code is kind of borrowed from the Cesium JS code, Cesium's library for showing 3D tiles, but it was kind of incomplete. There was some missing thing. It's still incomplete, but there were some things that were very necessary, like handling these nested tile sets and so on. So I did that as well. And then doing some performance testing, how many workers to use, how much memory to use. So ended up, at least for photogrammetry, I can say that using one worker has the best performance overall in mobile and desktop. Another thing I started to do, which is still incomplete, is research to we can call it like the holy grail of the 3D tile traversal, which is called the skip traversal, which is used. It was researched in Cesium as well, but even there it's not complete yet. But it's a kind of hierarchical traversal mechanism, which is much more efficient, but it's also much harder to implement, requires lots of use of either shaders or the depth buffer. So that's still in research. Feel free, by the way, to interrupt me with questions. But anyway, once we finished with the optimizing of the loading itself and showing the tiles, so then we went into the tiling process. So initially we used Cesium ion, but then when we started to put more complex and larger models, we ended up with all kinds of issues, both visual artifacts and both performance crashes and all sorts of problems with using Cesium's tilers. So we ended up actually using reality capture's export. So reality capture was a software used at the R&D for photogrammetry, and they actually have their own LOD export feature, which goes directly to 3D tiles. And we did have better visual quality, but actually also this one had lots of problems with how it's structure of the tiles, but it still kind of was easier to handle the problems with that one. And we did a lot of experimentation about the different parameters that you would choose when you're tiling. I wrote here, I can say that we ended up with choosing 10K, like 10,000 triangles per node, which is a tile. This is not the default number, like they have a much higher number initially, but when you're handling very large models, then you would like actually to decrease this because you end up with tiles that are just way too big. Also worth mentioning, it's easier to self-host the tiles when you use Reality Capture's 3D export because you basically get the tiles immediately and it's not on the Cesium Ion cloud. For anybody who doesn't know, 3D Tiles is an open specification which is created by this company Cesium, but it's an open specification, so anybody can implement the tiling mechanism and the loading mechanism. And so even this wasn't enough because the tiles themselves still had issues after they came from Reality Capture. Also, had some things missing. For example, they were not Draco compressed. I think this is going to be solved in the future versions, but it wasn't at that time. And then also the images were compressed initially to WebP, which requires all kinds of additions if you want to work on iOS, for example. So what I ended up doing was working on like basically basing on the Cesium's 3D tile and GLTF pipeline, which is also open source. I wrote some scripts to Draco compress everything and also the textures to basis universal format. They compressed the image texture, which actually worked very well. Sorry. And then there were still issues because the tiles themselves, like the meshes were not so optimized coming out from Reality Capture, especially the UVs and the texture baking had lots of issues. So I had to put another optimization step for the GLTF, and this time I tried with Blender. I wrote some script which runs Blender on the tiles and optimizes the meshes. That was still not enough, so we ended up actually using Instalot, a third-party tool. Probably we're not going to continue using this one, but look for other options. But basically, we had to write scripts to also optimize individually each tile in the process. But after a lot of trial and error and optimization, basically we wound up with something that we can call satisfactory. And the final result was this piece that once I think you will get the presentation, then you can see the link here. It was a piece about, as I said, like the gospel choir in Bethel, and John here, our project leader, he was managing the recording, and there was a 3D recording of the gospel choir, and you have this experience when you're flying around the church and hearing the gospel. I think worked out very well. Yeah, now that all the work is done, we are planning to open source basically everything that we did, and I'm really happy that the New York Times R&D, they are putting up the resource for this kind of thing. So for example, recently I have been spending most of my time working for the New York Times, but actually working with LotusGL. So I'm really happy that I was able to do these contributions, and we will already, most of the changes are posted to LotusGL, and we are also going to release the 3JS viewer as a standalone, and then we're also going to release more components, for example, control components where you can do like this storytelling using scrolling and the camera, using the mouse scroll to run the camera. So we're going to release that as well as part of a bigger open sourcing effort. So yeah, I'm very happy we are able to do this. Yeah, that's all I had to say. So thanks very much.
Yeah, thank you so much for presenting. It's always great to see our open source work being used for, reporting and journalism. Did you get any feedback of the Coral project you did on the?
All of the feedback I saw, like from comments on the website and from other people in the New York Times, then was really good, and the experience was very smooth. Didn't have and too many. Of course, we worked a lot that it doesn't crash, like optimizing the tiny bit of detail that it doesn't crash on an iPhone 12 or an iPhone 10, and we really had to do some very specific numbers that to make sure that doesn't crash on any of those, especially with the iPhones, because they are very restrictive, allow with the amount of memory they allow you to use. So we have some detection that which device you are using, and then setting up the parameters accordingly. So after a lot of testing in different devices, I think we managed to reach a rather stable level of experience. So worked out very well.
I was actually thinking, have you put it on like a 4K display, making like 3000 with a much larger on the big screen?
You mean like how it worked on the like higher end devices, or what?
Yeah,
what do you mean?
yeah. Have you tried it on like a much bigger screen for this?
Yeah, well, I mean, of course, it worked also on a bigger screen, but I have to remember we are here aiming kind of at the lowest denominator. There's many readers of the New York Times that all they are using is their phone. So we could use the parameters to LotusGL to optimize, to change a bit the quality level based if you are on the desktop or on the mobile, but still, I would say we are not maybe at the maturity level of the technology that we can easily show like a very high def experience to desktop while still maintaining the mobile working with the same model. Of course, if we are using different models, it's easier, but right now there is still a lot of restrictions we have to put on the model itself to support the lowest denominator.
Right.
Hey, Abner, this is great. Congratulations. This is a pretty awesome project. I was just actually playing with it as you were going on the website. One question. So on the improvements that you've done on the loaders, do you see that actually will, I mean, as to you or to others, like will it have any impact on DeckGL on the way that it loads also like MB tiles or other like, I know that they all use like the loaders and the hood. Is any other things that you've done there will improve the performance of loading other type of things, not just the 3D?
I think yes. I also saw when submitting the PRs, for example, that there's even in the I3S traversal, the different type of tiles in the LotusGL, it's the same code. And I saw one that mentioned that it actually solved one issue with viewing, for example, in buildings in New York using I3S. So that improves that as well. Also with point clouds that I think you can comment on that also, but I saw some improvement as well. I think mostly it's oriented towards this type of photogrammetry experience like we had, but it also has potential to improve other.
Well, that's great.
Yeah,
Sorry. Go ahead.
I could make a comment. So so we do have a a certain set of code to do traversal of traditional quad trees for 2D tiling. And then we have this separate traversal mechanism, which obviously is more sophisticated for the oct trees that are used in 3D tiles. And we have, Shadi and I have been discussing, if there are ways to kind of unify this into one traversal system so that we can benefit from this. But it's kind of an ongoing discussion and not concluded. I think we're right now in the phase of kind of expanding to make sure we support, a breadth of different tile sets. And then once we have the understanding of how all of that works, I think, a clear picture emerges of how we can do this, in a kind of unified good way.
I was well. One idea that I was having as you were showing it, I mean, it's like goes towards how we can promote better the whole BCL like ecosystem. So for me, this is a great example of how like an ecosystem like this, like with a project that is very specific for something, can have impact on a wider caliper. So I was wondering, Avner, if you would be up for a blog post that we can publish on maybe on the BCL, explaining about the like what you've done and so on, and then we can do a corollary of what other things will be benefiting from your work.
Yeah, of course. I mean, if this would have to be, of course, coordinated with the New York Times team, with the R&D, but if conditions allow it, I would of course be happy to. There's one other thing, and now I remember I wanted to mention, what you talked about, kind of specific requirements, and just kind of interesting, maybe another difference in the requirements that with the New York Times that we had was that because there's more emphasis on like the photojournalism, then we had much more emphasis on high quality of textures rather than showing high quality of meshes. So we are showing like usually rooms or streets. So we could run a lot of compromises in the how we show like the complexity of mesh, the 3D models themselves, but then we couldn't compromise too much on the textures. So this is not so relevant to the Lotus GL code, but it is relevant to how we like the workflow that we use for processing the tile. So just came to my mind now like another interesting fact.
Hi, this is Gail. Are you able to share the slide deck that you presented to us today so we
Yeah.
can include it in? Awesome.
Yeah, I have that slide, and I will put it.
Right, I sent it to Shannon. Yeah.
What's the next project to? I know that photogrammetry is a series of product that New York Times plan to release. And what's the next thing for this to come out?
I think the next thing now, there's the effort actually around the open sourcing, and there will be some like demos and simple guides on how to like open sourcing the process of photogrammetry at the New York Times. I guess if John is here, like our project leader, he can expand on this more. But I think more is about this right now, and then I'm not sure what will be the next photogrammetry project, but I do know that there's going to be more down the line.
Great.
And Avner, could you comment on like for making these pictures for this particular gospel story, what kind of device do you need to collect this data?
You mean like what camera was used?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I wasn't involved in that process, but is John here? I don't know. But maybe.
Hey everybody. Yeah, this is John. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm exercising and listening to this during my lunch break, so apologies. But no, we use Canon. Sony A7s, the version 4, and basically we set all the parameters to be similar, so we reduce the amount of artifacts we get for across ISO and lens distortion. We also use LiDAR to improve the mesh quality. So I think we did maybe 30 LiDAR scans of the space, as well as flew a little bit of drones shots. We have a brief article that I can share later that kind of talks a little bit about our workflow. It tends to focus more on the audio front, but there's a little bit about it in the on the photogrammetry capture. The other thing I will just sort of reiterate is that what Avner mentioned is that we're going to be releasing a set of instruction sets to really kind of go over our process. And what we're trying to do is with iPhone 12 Pro and with some of these newer mobile phones, is try to reduce the difference in quality that you can get with a Sony A7 together with a mobile phone, so that we can get similar level of detail. It's not the same, but we're excited about the capability of the mobile phone, and that's something we'll dive into in greater detail, as well as providing an explainer about how to use Loaders GL and how we process it with RC. So that'll be coming out probably in the next 3 or 4 weeks.
I posted a link now. I think, John, that was what you were referring to about that insider article. It has more about the audio, but it's a bit more about the process.
Thank you. Thanks.
All right. Do we have more questions from the audience?
Just a comment. It's amazing how much fun you guys have at the New York Times. This is amazing. Well done, guys. Very interesting.
Yeah, congrats. I was just I had the site up on my other screen here. It's really, I've never seen anything like this before. It's so cool.
It's always amazing how much technical research and innovation that New York Times can put into to make this happen. I'm sure even for the photo capture part of things, using drones and different cameras to stitch them together, generating city space, that by itself is already a master thesis that I actually used to do when I was at architecture school. So I know how much things has to happen just to make this website. I think that's it. We were concluding today's meeting. Thank you, Abner and John, to come presenting. You are presenting to the developer who wrote the code that for you to build this. So I'm sure all of them are very excited to see their work being used, in such an innovative way and by the New York Times. So thank you so much. And building up this direct channel to the developer will also help you. They will also be very happy to come and help you whenever you have problem using those libraries. So
yeah, I actually want to say that the help from Eve and the team, like in Lotus GL, has been really, really great. Like answering so quickly to all the pull requests and then helping to solve the issues. So yeah, really thank you. It's been a real pleasure to work with the team.
All right. I think that will be it for this month's meeting. And I got a question from Johannes to be able to share the meeting invite to a broader audience. Right now, I think we only have that on the UCF email list. And if there's a way we can better share the calendar invite, so whenever you guys want to invite more people, you can just send the link out. I don't know, Gail, is there a way to better get this to other?
We have it published to GitHub and to the website, but I think those are kind of, if people come to them, they find them. But if you have people in your network, you can add it to. Anyone can add themselves to it. And if they have trouble figuring it out, I'm happy to add people individually as well. But it's a public calendar, public invite. So anyone who sees it can just add it to their calendar if they want to. But if you have people who need some help with that, I'm happy to help. Excuse me, sorry. I have allergies today. But really, I mean, we have it published. I think it's just a matter of helping get it out there a little bit more. Your word of mouth, probably, kind of sharing it around.
Right. I will make sure that everybody who are on the calendar has access to add more people. And right now I have been manually adding them. So yeah.
Yeah, it should be completely open to the public. So it's a public calendar. I'll copy the link right now, just pop it in chat. So anyone should be able to view it there. People can add it to their personal calendar. We don't have it so that everyone can edit it. But it is publicly viewable, and you can add it to your own calendar if you want. And if you want someone added, I can add it. You can, Sean. We can add other people to help admin it as well. Yeah, it's lots of flexibility in how we do it.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would just every time when I send an email, I will just share the link, the calendar link as well. So, forward that link will make sure forward my email will be able to have the recipient access this.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right, thank you guys for today, and thanks again, Amir and John. We'll see you guys next month.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank
Ciao.
you.
Thanks for the presentation.
Um,